Welcome to another episode of Tecman Talks Dynamics. It's 2024, so Happy New Year to you guys. I've seen you all before, but it'll do.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And to all our viewers. It sounds very, very posh, doesn't it? But also, it's our 4th year doing the podcast. And the other thing I saw last night, and talking to Dan, who does our videos, is our 50th episode of the podcast.
This is our
Happy anniversary. So it all coincides with a new year, new season's worth of podcasts, and it's our 50th episode. So,
wow.
We've come up with a really special topic today to talk about. But no, being the start of a new year, we thought we'd have a look at how your systems, Business Central, Dynamics, how that's going to play out in 2024, what we should be looking at, what's coming, but what you've got already and how we can utilise it and use it a little bit better.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be going into this year quite cautious. You know, there's a lot of doom mongering, isn't there? Everyone's a little bit cautious about big investments. So I think
depends where you are in the world, but
I think
it's still tough trading for a lot of people, isn't it? Yeah.
Margins are under pressure, aren't they?
Yeah.
Lead times are ever shorter and all that sort of stuff. So supply chains are insecure.
So I think looking at what you've got, maximising the use of what you've got, and automating processes to make you more efficient is something that people should really focus on.
If you fundamentally come down to it, what do we do for organisations? We save time. You could do everything manually. I mean, I hate to see the manual process that would run some organisations these days, but effectively it's time saving. Yeah. And I think, it's not complexity we're trying to solve, it's time saving. So that's where I think you have to look at where do you actually spend time and the frequency with which you spend time. It's the old time and motion study, nothing's changed in 60 years. Because if you're doing something 10 times a day and it's taking 2 minutes, and you're doing something once a month and it's taking 30, go for the one that you're doing 10 times a day. You'll save way more time and you will affect far more people who will get the process done quicker.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think as well as that, talking about the products that we work with, being on a SaaS platform helps as well, because you've always got something in terms of new functionality coming down the line. So if you've made that jump to cloud,
so there's 2 real reasons for that. I think that SaaS is it enables that, because you can try something out on much faster. If you're still on premise and you want to try out something new, just creating a test system for you to try out can take days. Now on SaaS, it's minutes. I
signed off a quote yesterday for one of our quotes. So for one of our customers, just to create a new test environment. Now they've got BC, CRM, and various other integrations that sit around it. So we have to, on an on-premise environment, have to recreate the whole thing.
Snapshot everything.
Yeah. Make sure that we go through a process to make sure that, we're not sending emails out of the test system and all those kinds of things. That is just so easy once you're on SaaS. It's just so easy.
Plus, I think, AppSource gets criticised a lot, and rightly, finding stuff on AppSource. But when we signpost stuff that's on AppSource and say, try this out, on SaaS, you can try it out in minutes generally. And that gives you a lot of confidence. And, you get a 60-day trial and all. You don't have to have it added to your license before it works and all this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of blocks. So I think you have a lot of agility. You can execute a lot quicker. You can try something out. If you don't like it, you don't want to do it, you can bin it. Yeah. And you haven't invested so much time that you've got to follow through, which generally by the time on premise.
Yeah. Well, a day's work just to create the environment to put it in. Yeah. Then you've got to add it.
Yeah.
Then you've got to license it.
On premise, you've got to be in a situation where you've got to be a lot of confidence that yes, it's got to work. So you've got to ask a lot more questions up front. On SaaS, you can go try it out, see whether you like it or not, have a few conversations, and then so your time to value, you've time to actually execute that particular change on SaaS is days, weeks, rather than potentially months on premise. And I know our internal teams they kind of now roll their eyes on premise, don't they? Because they know how much work they've got to do, which is routine, boring, not very exciting stuff that actually, yes, we need to do it and we will do it and all the rest of it, but it does slow down.
And it's expensive and it's not a great use of time, is it?
We all do this job to change, we enjoy doing this job because we enjoy
Results.
enabling change, results in customers, and it's just so much longer and so much more difficult.
And of course, being on SaaS, you've got my favourite, Power Automate. So, if we're talking about
the connectivity works.
Processes
just works.
Yeah, so if we said at the beginning, you want to be looking at the processes that are taking lots of manual time and where people are having to work through lists to find certain information, you can use Power Automate to kind of trigger that automatically.
Yeah, you can run a flow off any record now.
Yeah.
And you want a customer
So when
card
this
and you need to
happens,
send a
this.
form or
Yeah.
something like that. Click, done.
Or even just to alert you. So rather than someone having to work, everyone sees
Send a form. Aren't you firing up Microsoft Forms and getting them to fill it in on
even
screen
do-
so you get the results
Yeah.
back as data, even better?
We all know that customers will have saved lists, and each morning someone has to go through that list to see if they can do a certain thing with that order, or that those kinds of processes can now be automated relatively easily.
And we've got some new features recently as well on SaaS, which is the business events. So something happens in
exactly.
a customer goes over their credit limit is a business event. So it can fire off a flow.
Or Teams, and then you Teams message
you can integrate
into
to Teams.
inbox
You can push the data into Teams. You do adaptive cards.
Yeah.
It just makes that whole business process so much slicker. And you really could take do your 2 minutes a day per person using that kind of technology.
I mean that's new work. I mean it's low cost and it's low code, but it is new work. It drives me mad that people don't use what they've got. I see people are still accountants at the end of the month struggling with big fixed asset spreadsheets. Now that's there. It's part of the standard license. It's really easy, really quick to set up. There's standard training material to help you learn how to use it, because nobody needs it modified. It's very basic.
But
Everybody should be aware of Microsoft Learn.
This comes back to the old chestnut of continuous improvement, and I think moving on to Business Central, upgrade to SaaS, and so on, you do get a lot of kind of post-project stress disorder. It's kind of it's quite traumatic. It's quite a lot of work. Yeah, effectively, it's quite a lot of work, and I think people go, "Oh, glad that's over."
Just set up a helpline, shouldn't we?
Well, counselling, yes, but I think then that's all right for 3 months or so. But then I think you need to say, right, how are we going to improve this? And it's too easy just to slip back into that's what it is.
Let's start creating
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And the real value actually of Dynamics on premise or on SaaS is the fact that you can continually look at it. It shouldn't be a static thing. It should be a continuous process of going back and saying, this takes us too long. This goes wrong too often. This whatever. And the simpler those things are, probably the faster they are to fix. And you can, there's a better way. So if you're spending 20 minutes a day on clicking different things and taking this from here and putting it in here or whatever, that's where you should be saying, how can this be done better?
Yeah.
And some of the time we'll say, actually, you have to apply subjective logic to that.
Yeah.
Some of the time you'll go, well, yeah, that's just a process. We can power automate it. We can do something else.
Or there's already something in the system that will do it.
Yeah.
And people need to be aware that there's so many resources out there now that all of your users can just access. So MS Learn has
learn.microsoft.com.
Yes.
Thank you, Matt.
There you go.
You have to put it on there, caption that.
There is a lot, isn't it? Because end users obviously have their day job to do, and it's hard enough for them maybe to stay up to date with what's going on in their industry, as well as focusing on what we do all day, every day, which is knowing what's new and what's going. And I know we try and throw stuff out on the podcasts, on blogs, etc. But I mean, we're jumping around a little bit, but you've mentioned this a few times, is having people within your organisation, and maybe not a full-time role, but have some responsibility for knowing what's going on with your business systems and staying on top of something that can then pay back, like as you've said already, on what's in the box, what you've already paid for, what you're paying for as part of your subscription, or what's coming in the next release that you could take and embed in your business, and as you said, save time for 50, 60, 100 people within your organisation by having someone spending a few hours a month by trying to stay up to date with what's going on.
Our customers wouldn't go out and invest in a piece of machinery without having a proper servicing plan in place, having a maintenance plan, either and having people within the organisation that really understand how it works. But with a system, they do, and they shouldn't. Yeah. They should have exactly the same. So a huge investment, and to get the absolute most out of it, it needs people that really understand, and it is part of their job to monitor what's coming next, to look at the processes that aren't working, and to not keep putting sticking plasters on it, to make sure that it's working as efficiently as it possibly can in the organisation.
Education is a big piece, though, isn't it? Because so often if we pick up new customers where you go and look at their processes, and you do know there's a standard feature that does all that, and you see the shoulders drop. It's like, really?
I'm scared our customers as well, because
I'm sure there's some of that as well.
And sometimes they go in.
People change over time.
People change, and we've always done it this way, and it kind of why? And I think change is disruptive and time consuming, but that's where you need to look for the lower hanging fruit. And I think that's where, if you're not talking to your partner every quarter, every half year about this, is create just a little kind of list of processes that you don't think are optimal, and then kind of what's the best way of tackling this. And we have now, we have the best ever toolbox of kind of techniques and capability, and it Power Automate, you get so many flows as part of your Dynamics license, so it's there already. The fact that you're not using it, you're making Microsoft's profits bigger because it's not costing them anything. So why are you giving away that money?
One thing at this podcast is that everyone should, if they've listened to it, should go and they should make a list of those kinds of things that they do, those manual processes.
When your partner comes in, you should have a list.
Speak to your account manager and work with them to work out the best way to tackle those requirements. And I can almost guarantee that some of them you will be able to tick off.
And don't
very
assume
low cost and very low investment, which is meant, usually it's a test.
Even a process review, because they might think what they're doing is
go through an area
is the most
business,
efficient. Don't say, where are the gaps? They might say, well, that's fine, that works fine, but
you may be implemented 3 years ago. Okay, lots change in business in 3 years. New products come through, and customers change.
Your users have high expectations of what a system can deliver. And if it is causing them pain, and if it is affecting their quality of life, I read a study when I was doing a presentation with the customer day about how now people will leave jobs because they don't, because basically they spend all day fighting with the computer system.
They don't want to
and it affects, exactly. And I think if you're especially if you're remote and you're working from home, and basically you're sat there with a system that you're fighting against day in, day out, that people don't want to work with those kind of systems, and they will go somewhere else where it's much easier to work with, or where they have a way of, right, I've got this issue, I'm going to pass it on to somebody and they're going to help me.
But I mean, even if it's you, life is too short to waste time. The other thing, I mean, when you do that process review and kind of highlight the issues that we spend lots of time on this, even if you asked that question a year ago, look, technology is changing all the time. Our capabilities, what we know we can do today is quite significantly different from what it was a year ago. There might be an app launched in AppSource that just does that enables that. Just because you asked the question a year ago and got an answer that wasn't positive, don't assume that it won't be positive now. And yes, I suppose in the ideal world, we would remember you asked the question and come back and go, tick the box, but ask the question, because that's difficult to do, to remember every conversation that we have when we have quite a few in any individual day. I think that's one of the things that customers have to appreciate about partners. In a partner, if you go back 5 to 10 years, I think most kind of consultants dealt with half a dozen customers, a dozen customers, because they did the implementation. Now, because we're doing stuff remotely and Teams and all the rest of it, you're slicing into hours, you've got much more specialist areas. And so, you're typically dealing with 30, 40 different customers at any point where you've got an awareness of what they've done. And then, in partners like ourselves, you've got hundreds of customers, so you've got a whole bunch. So I think that's, don't assume that your partner knows that the right person in the partner knows exactly what you want to do and trying to achieve. Actually ask the question.
But also, potentially your business would have changed anyway. So
Yes.
the discussions that we would have had 5 years ago would be different today anyway. Well, we all know post-COVID, lots of businesses have changed significantly. But even without that, even within the last few years, things will have changed. And advice that we'd have given 2 years ago, because of your requirements and because of the technology we now have, will not be necessarily the same now anyway. Yeah. So if people are going to go away and try and put together a little target list of what are the tools that you guys have seen that offer the most efficiencies? What have you seen work really well?
I mean, for me, a bugbear, I don't think everybody does this, is going and creating the proper cut down profiles for your sets of users. It's a simple thing to do, and it makes such a big difference to the users, and especially new users coming in as well. So you take away every field that you're not using, every link, every menu, and it just cuts it right down. And you want to get to the point where your user comes in, they look at the screen, go, yeah, that's me, that's my day.
So that's one of our workshops then for this year. I think
it's
that's a really good point.
Especially if you go to a new system, it's very overwhelming.
Especially where people have come from old versions of the product when it wasn't that easy to do.
Yep.
And there's new tools to do it now, and there's much better ways to do it now.
And the other thing with the profiles now is that you can drop any, when you're doing the profile editor, you can drop any field on any page without customization. So, whereas before we used to have to build an extension for that, or you had to go in the designer and all that sort of stuff, you've got that flexibility now, and that should make you re-look at the profile editor from scratch.
We'll get a workshop for that, so that no one's got an excuse for that. James, anything else that you think?
The one I go back to, actually, that we used internally in Tecman is the bank integration, which is saving us 20 minutes a day. And it's just you push a button and all your bank transactions end up in your journal, and it tells you who the client is. It picks the right client and drops it in. And all you've got to do is say, well, that's paying these invoices. And it's kind of, we used to do the bank first thing in the morning, and it used to be like 10:30, 11 o'clock before we got a list of who paid us and all the rest of it. Now we're getting it at kind of 8:30, and she's through that process. And then she's doing it in the afternoon as well because she can. So with now in the UK bank transactions,
cash flow is probably a hot topic for many people at the moment. So this is really important.
It's 20 minutes every business day with one account. And we have probably 20-25 payments on average a day. I would say some days it's points in the month it's probably 3 or 4 in a day, but other times it's kind of 100.
Yeah.
But when it's 100, that's even more valuable because she still does it in, yes, she can post the amounts and get them off stop, even if she then later goes and applies them. Yeah. So it's just something, and
But also, there's more coming in this area, isn't there? So once you've got that, then we hope to see much better bank reconciliation
using AI.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this
you've got the data.
Just,
it's almost taking a whole loop out of kind of the credit, because the credit controllers know what's been paid and what hasn't been paid, so they can start chasing quicker. So it kind of frees up a whole, and that's core finance, which I think a lot of people say, oh, core finance, not a lot's going to change there. It's been the same for donkey's years.
But that's where you'll find the efficiencies, though, isn't it? Because those tend to be the areas where people will do what they've always done, and it works, and it. People don't always want to disrupt that. However, there can be massive time savings. Things like bank rec, things like fixed assets, things like using recurring journals and journal templates.
It's not just bank, because the best use case I've seen of it so far is pulling in credit card reconciliation. Yeah. So if you take lots of credit card payments, reconciling those could be a bit of a nightmare, and it would just pull it in from your merchant services provider and drop it in your journal, so you can just post it.
Yeah,
without moving a file around as well.
Yeah, with none of this and kind of what
and the whole security risk as well. Now,
well, the reason that's become available now is because of Financial Services Authority approval for it to happen. So that's why it's come to the commercial world from the private world, because somebody's finally gone through all of the rigorous paperwork. I looked at that a few years ago, and it was going to cost like the lawyers' fees was just scary. Plus,
so
all
there's
the
a couple of apps we've got now around banking. There's the Yavrio is the one that you referred to that will pull in the transactions. There's also a currency app that will allow you a live link for currency conversions,
trading
in currencies. Again, probably something that has been done in the same way for forever.
Well, but that's a game changer, because most organisations, I think, have an agreement with their bank to buy so much currency or whatever. With this one, you can say, right, do my payment journal. What foreign currency do I need? And go off and get bids on a marketplace. So effectively, it's bringing, Amazon style. Yeah. Bet365 style kind of flexibility
without someone manually having to go and check all these different things. Yeah, I think that's
in a couple of minutes. So saving money on your FX potentially in a very different way, and you can forward buy as well, so that you can create the availability, so you've got certainty if you need to.
My other bugbear is people exporting a chart balance to Excel and then producing all their P&L and balance sheet from a chart balance in Excel, when you've got financial reports which are so much better than they used to be.
Yes.
From the original account schedules. Look at them again, they are so powerful what they can do. Even if ultimately you build them in there and export them to Excel and make them look pretty, the what it gives you, and the fact that you can drill down straight off, you can break it down by your dimensions and all those kinds of things that you just don't want to spend.
I mean, customers are, a lot of them have transitioned to SaaS from on-prem, and the implementation and all the questions about why we do what we do can be a decade old now.
Yeah,
and the software has changed a lot in a decade.
With something like producing your financial reports, people have found a way to do it, and the way they're comfortable with and the way they like. So
and let's face it, the deadline comes around and you kind of go, I need to do it.
So it probably was never really looked at as part of the implementation or the migration to SaaS. But the software, the underlying software is so much better than it was, and is so much more powerful.
Unless you re-implemented and you looked at every last thing on your migration to SaaS, it's a platform change. It wasn't a process change for 99% of things. And actually, where you get the benefit as an organisation is from process change, process improvement. So, don't tick migrate to SaaS. What migrate to SaaS will do should make the process change faster and more flexible.
The migrate to SaaS should be phase one.
Yeah, well,
phase two should be then looking at what can I do with it.
It's not even phase one. It's kind of 0.5. It's just an enabler for the process change. I mean, if your process is going to stay the same forever, you might as well stay on premise.
Yeah.
You've also got to change that mindset to make sure that you're seeing what's coming that's new, and that you're building that into the process. And you're using it.
Ask the questions.
The reason it's there is to make the software better and to make it more efficient. And really that's what a lot of the changes that are coming in have done, is they just make the software easier to use, better user experience and more efficient.
But if you look at your trial balance example, the trial balance report, you can create an Excel layout from that. So you run the report.
Don't give people another way of getting a trial balance into Excel.
But you don't need to then go type and stuff in.
I get that.
You can push the data.
But also, they shouldn't be doing
out.
that with a trial balance. They producing a financial report and sending that.
But, okay,
you can also push the financial reports into a report as well.
Exactly, which would be better.
Your reporting pack should be coming off a financial report. Yeah. That has consistency about it.
But Excel layouts are
budgets,
new.
How many people still don't put their budgets into BC and then have them separately, and then have to do manual reports at the end of the month to pull them all together?
Well, prior year comparisons.
It's mental. Absolutely mental.
Which business doesn't want to know how they are against what they were doing last year?
And again, if you want to understand how to do this, you don't have to pay us for training necessarily. This is all standard features.
Yep.
If you go on
learn.microsoft.com.
Thank you, Matt. then it does tell you how to use it all and talk.
And actually, those
process.
courses are very straightforward and kind of
because it's a fairly standard practice.
They talk it through simple. At a simple level, it's not complex.
You mentioned this before we started that as well. It sounds like a massive job for one person, and maybe it is. But you talked about looking at this in individual roles. So if you're the FD, you're going to look at it from your angle, and you've talked a lot of financial reporting and the budgeting, etc.
Yeah, to guess my background.
Yeah, so that's it, isn't it? And so when you see those things in the software, in the solution, that's what jumps out. But you can also get very blinded. But that's the way we've always done it. But then you've got maybe the warehouse manager looking at various things that now happen.
Almost each individual area of the business needs their hit list for the year, I think. Yeah.
But I mean, this is one of the early podcasts you talk about us on our 50th anniversary. One of the early podcasts I remember doing was the change in role from IT manager to business process manager. And kind of, that for me, IT management, I mean, we're in the process, we're ripping the last few servers out of here now. And we've had to rename a room in St Mark's as the comms room because call it the server room. It doesn't have a server. So what the hell? So kind of...
Does have a 1997 mobile phone though.
As we found.
But, so that whole kind of... It's changed on SaaS. A lot of the things that an IT manager traditionally would have done just don't exist as a task anymore. So that role has got to progress. I do think you've got people across the business. I think you do need somebody who coordinates.
To coordinate it, yes.
But the warehouse manager starts deciding that they're going to change something, and
that should go through the
process.
It's creating the list that then gets coordinated, and then you talk to a partner where you say, right, well, okay, then how do we pull all this together? And
when the partner comes in for their checkup visit, then it should be an hour with a warehouse manager now, or actually, what works better for me is a walk round. So rather than bringing them into the room, you go into the warehouse and have a look, because when I do that, I know that I get, how do you do this and how do you do that? And that starts conversations and it starts balls rolling.
And we're happy to come in and do that. If for the new year, you wanted to go through this process, someone will come on site and I can probably, can I say this? Yeah, I'm going to say it. I can guarantee that we will find at least 10 things where you can save time and save.
Liz said.
Yeah.
But that's what we're saying.
Challenge us, and I think we can.
Come in and do a New Year's resolution list with them almost, and what can be improved.
We can, can't we?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of...
some of them might be small, but they will be
those
quick
are small wins.
Some of them will be quick wins. Some of them will be mini projects. Some of them will be longer term things, but I can guarantee that for very low cost, we can make some big change.
It's kind of, look, don't expect everything you ask is going to have a positive response. The criteria we've always used is, would we spend our own money trying to do this?
Yeah.
Well, you talked about apps, and there was a conversation I picked up on yesterday that someone, I think we'd looked at quoting some work for somebody, which had in the region of 20k for this mini project. And then someone said, well, yeah, but we pointed out an app, which was 75 quid per user, and they only like 5 users on this. Yeah. Makes a massive difference. You haven't got to invest that for it. And then if it doesn't work, that app will continue to improve or whatever. But they can trial it first of all for 30, 60 days and save them writing off a 20k spend potentially.
Can I just make a
that
point?
That trial process, because if you use something that even you think it doesn't do X, Y, and Z, you will get some good ideas about how you should design the 20k's worth of bespoke you're going to do. Yeah. So, looking at... There's no new ideas under the sun, is there? No, looking at how somebody else has gone through their loop and how they, even if it's something that you don't want your stuff to do, it's like, I don't want it like this because that's rubbish. The negative is
just to make the point.
To the positive.
People shouldn't be designing software around bad processes. So if you've got a situation where in the warehouse, you're asking us to make the stock take process easy because people aren't following the process of moving stock when they should do it. Yeah. That's not right. Then you need to look inwards, not outwards.
It's like the way process doesn't happen as well. So you talk about the warehouse. If you've got a pile of returns that aren't processed, that have been there for quite a while, well, that's probably a problem. How do we make the returns process easier?
Yeah, look at the root cause. Don't just try and fix bad process.
I was talking to one customer last week, and we do a specific CSV export of invoice information that we send to them along with the PDF invoice. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, we set that up 5 years ago. And I went, well, have we asked them if they've started doing EDI recently? And it turns out, yes, they have.
But
and we
that's
can
a really
get rid of that whole
though,
process.
I've had so many occasions where customers said, we need to send this to the customer. And they say, actually, do we need it? And they go and ask it. The customer goes, no one ever opens that. just because somebody 10 years ago asked for it.
It is legitimate to say, do you still need this, or is there a better way? And I think, if a supplier comes into us and says, can we do this, or have you got this capability, or whatever, I see that as very proactive. I think that's a really good thing for your supplier to be able to try to make transacting with you easier.
Well, if they don't need the information, they don't want it. Nobody wants their inbox filled with a load of stuff that they don't need.
Email is not the right way of sending anything, is it?
Potentially not, but I've said it before. I always remember going into a customer and talking about them saying to me, "Right, I need this report. I must have this report at the end of each month." And I said, "Well, what do you do with that report?" I said, "Well, I put it in this folder, and then I take this folder and I put this folder on this shelf."
It's apocryphal, isn't it? Yeah, it's kind
and
of
I said, "Well, but I have to have it because that's what my predecessor told me. That's what I have to do, and that's what I must do."
Covering your backside, isn't it? You don't even know why.
But it had come from the days where you used to close down a month end and you couldn't get the information anymore. Well, that was, But
that's 101 of consulting for our team, isn't
it?
Why?
Why?
It's kind of like,
all of our customers can do that.
You don't understand why this is being asked for and what the need is and what the driver is for it, then we shouldn't even be talking about how it works or the design.
When we used to do the traditional upgrades, which have obviously slowly disappeared as we move more people to SaaS, that was the first thing you did. Why have you got 300 reports? How many are actually used? And so
we developed a tool, didn't we, to see how often they were actually being run.
I mean, we can run that on SaaS.
If SaaS is happening, so that would be useful on SaaS, but we probably don't
go reports anymore
because you don't have that period where we're doing something new, we are upgrading. It's a time to take stock and evaluate what we've got. I think what we're saying in today's podcast is that should be a regular thing. Although your software is continuing to do it, it should be continually, as you said.
A lot of reports went to customised lists, which had lots of extra fields dropped on. And the problem with dropping extra fields on lists is depending on the type of field that you drop on, it can have a big performance impact. So if you're putting up an item list and you've dropped the quantity on inventory on that item list, it's got to do not just display the 25 lines on that list, it's got to do 25 calculations to work out the total of the item ledger entries.
But if that is really useful information, if that's really useful information and it helps people, then there's other ways it can be done.
There's other ways of doing it, exactly. But, profiling, in effect, we don't, it's a combination. It's now there's no development work to do. It's a conversation about the best way of doing that, and we have a different set of tools than we had a year ago for doing that. So our answer would be different, and
analyze mode.
Going back, analyze. Very good point. So going back and looking at and coming up with better ways of doing it, and yes, there's some cost there, but there's also some benefit in that if we eliminate 10 of your customized pages by doing that, then in effect you've got less to test at upgrade time and all the rest of it. It will just work.
Most transactional pages are now there available at the box. So whereas if you wanted custom ledgers, you used to choose a customer, go to the screen, take off the filters, and then do something with that data. Those customer ledger, item ledger entry, value entries, they're just there now as standard screens, and you can go and analyze mode, put filters on, save filters.
We know the search functionality where you can search for a term and it brings up the right page with the filtered list already there. It's kind of like, so that comes back to the training. And that's part of the kind of the basic. We do an introduction to Business Central for new customers coming in. That's half day, and we teach them how to navigate and filter and all this stuff.
Again,
but
education.
What we do in that today. Yeah, but what we do today is very different from what we'd have done 3 years ago. Yeah. There's the different capability now. Yeah. And yet how many of our existing user base have kind of understood the changes over those 3 years and adopted them.
There's a hard enough task for our consultants to keep up with this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, let alone, and that's their day job.
But we do work quite hard at picking out, what is
Key
really
things.
valuable and pushing it out. So that
At
information
times
is
new,
there.
but if they
Yeah.
miss that, and then they can be off the boat for a long time.
If we're talking New Year's resolutions as well, I think we should mention data.
Yes.
And the responsibility to maintain good quality data and the amount of difference that makes. So whether that's,
It's critical.
so one customer the day, they've got their item, they've got multiple companies, their item data's in a mess, they've got the same code in both companies that relate to 2 different items. They've got same customers in both but have different codes. So that kind of there's ways of better managing that data
reporting,
now.
same
Whether you
customer
use like
set up
a
multiple
data
times.
sync app or a flow or an Power Automate or something to manage your data. There's lots of ways to do that better now.
The standard master data management in BC
and
now.
it's of course, and it's time consuming to do it, but surely the benefit long term to doing it is massive.
Can I call out another app?
Go on.
Which is a clever one this time, so Liam will be pleased. Clever data validation. The fact that you have a registration number on the customer or a VAT number on the customer. Okay, so now you can set up a data validation rule that says if this VAT number already exists, don't allow the customer to be created. Which just stops your duplication.
Yeah.
And things like that are just like wow.
Yeah.
And it's kind of you hit that problem first, and once you've got 2 customers, 2 customer records for the same customer, merging them back together is just it's a mess, and it's kind of
horrible.
it's horrible.
Well, don't forget you can merge customers though.
You can, but
Standard, I bet people
little
forget
bit.
about
It's
that.
the same with items as well, though, isn't it? If you've set your item up with the wrong costing method and you start transacting on that item, you've got no choice really but to dump it.
without item tracking, and it needs.
And
it
so
to-
if you've done that to one item, that's not so bad. If you've imported 100 items and done them all wrong, then that's a much bigger problem.
Getting your rules about data validation into, a lot of, probably historically we say one person needs to own the data, the master data, but that puts a lot of pressure on one person to remember it all and get it right. Setting up a few records to say this is a rule I want to do, and it's data driven now. It's not.
And it's part of Clever
customization,
Essentials.
and it's part of Clever Essentials.
So
So a lot of it.
So a
Tecman
lot
customers
of
already have
our
it.
customers, in fact, nearly all of our SaaS customers will have that.
So a New Year's resolution for me on our internal system would be data validation, to set up a new data validation rule every month, and just like put another
There's
one
another
in.
workshop.
Let's do another workshop. Yeah.
Right,
It's
so
just like-
let's recap then. So New Year's resolutions.
sounds like you're creating loads of workshops for your New Year's resolutions.
Well, one of the
George
things
will
that
be
we
happy.
did at the end of last year was a customer survey to try and pull out, is the information that we're sending out, is it valuable? Are people getting it? Are they reading it? Do they find it useful? And that was to try and work out our kind of communication strategy for this year, which is how often should we run workshops? How often should we send out updates? Because we don't want to fill up people's inboxes with we've got so much information we could share, but we need to make sure that we're just sending what's really relevant. So we really welcome that kind of feedback, and really thank people that fill that in, because it's helped us then structure how we do it for the next year. But certainly the New Year's resolutions, I think, should be that everybody should be looking at these areas of the system where they're doing lots of manual work, lots of duplication of effort, lots of repetitive tasks, and looking at kind of a hit
Or
list as how
data
they can
going
tackle
wrong,
that.
yeah.
And then secondly, looking at the data.
Volumes of
but
data
then
as well.
also
Yeah.
looking at education of the users and making sure that they've got access to
learn.microsoft.com.
but any other tools that will help them use the system more effectively, so that they can.
And the data is going to be self-perpetuating. If you get your data right, there are then tools, as we're starting to see with AI creeping in, that will work far better if your data is good.
That's one of the reasons I brought up data, because if you want to start to take advantage in the future of things like AI, then your data needs to be good quality, because you don't want to make decisions based on crappy old data.
Coming down the line, as we saw demonstrated towards the end of last year, is the ability to have a little bar appears on the side of BC and ask it a question about your data. Who's selling the most products of this from this? Who's buying most from this product range? And it will go along and find that information. Now, if you've got rubbish data in there, sales orders that are left open for 5 years, purchase orders that are received and not been
production orders never finished.
Someone's put the invoice on and not matched it, so the receipt's sat there.
Go and start that now.
Please, we've got lists and we've got checklists of things like this that we can help. And
that can be tidying up your data can be quite time consuming, isn't it? So this comes back to, if we can shave a couple of minutes off each, sales order process, your transaction process, then you get the strategic time back to make your system, and you get into that productivity cycle, which is so important for, just user sentiment. Users will, when they see something that's continually improving, they'll buy into it, and they'll get their shoulder behind it, and they'll help to improve it even more, and it kind of starts driving the whole thing forward. And also, UK PLC, the way of turning around the negative sentiment that we hear in the press that we started off with this is productivity. Productivity in the UK specifically, and in Europe is not where it needs to be, and part of that is kind of, I think systems have got a part to play in making people more efficient.
The analogy you made
get
of
your house in order, and then you can start to take advantage of all the really clever stuff.
You made the analogy earlier that a customer wouldn't buy some new machinery without training it or investing. You'd also make sure it was serviced and all of those things. Yeah. And if you do that with your system, because otherwise you are just building up a problem for down the line, that's then going to be a major upheaval. If you keep chipping away at it and keep looking at how we can improve and get your data right and all those things, when the new functionality comes, you'll take advantage of it and you'll be ahead of the game.
Dynamics is a complex machine. Okay, it doesn't have to be complex for the users, but it is a complex machine. That's where its capability comes from. You wouldn't have a complex machine on your production floor, and then one operator comes in and they get 2 days handover from the guy who's leaving, and kind of then left in charge of your machine. And if you look at what you've spent in Dynamics over a 10-year period, I bet it's equivalent to, in subscription and all the rest of it, it's probably equivalent investment for your business to
anything else that you might
some of the other stuff.
And what's the impact if it goes wrong?
Yes, it doesn't stop one process, it stops them all.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's quite a
Happy New Year.
A place to finish.
I think, it's positive.
It is positive. Look,
it's the New Year's resolution.
The message is to go out.
What's yours, Liam?
My resolution? Well, back onto Botox. Yes, there's lots of resolutions which have already broken.
That dry January sailed, I think.
Dry January the 1st, wasn't it?
Something along those lines, yeah.
I'm doing dry January. I only drink dry wine.
I like it. Very good. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us on our 50th episode, and we'll be back soon with more Tecman Talks Dynamics. Thanks, guys.